The doctor told my husband she's got 1 hour to live. And meanwhile, they're pulling me into the operating room, and I start to feel like I'm going to have a panic attack, and I can't breathe.
Losing a loved one, it can be one of the most difficult things someone goes through in life, especially for the spouse, especially for a child.
There is a Knoxville woman, though, who is making it her mission to help those families carry on.
Kelly Orrico nearly left behind her husband CJ and 4 young children. They co-founded Widow Parent Relief Project on May 3rd, 2022 on National Widows Day.
What do you want your kids to say about you when you're gone? Hopefully they'll say, I know my mom loved me. I'm definitely a perfectionist. I don't like to make mistakes, and that affects your family life, and that affects your personal life. Okay, today was not a great day of me balancing my family. I need to fix that fast.
How and what boundaries do you set in your life to make sure that you can do what you need to do?
That dinner time and bonding time is really important to me. I used to spend so much time cooking and making gourmet meals, and there's nothing wrong with that, but now I don't have time for that, and it's like, but we still need to eat healthy. The laundry builds up. It's like, yeah, I'll get to that.
Hey mamas, this is a series all about moms who are boss babes and juggling family life, work life, and being a successful businesswoman. I have Kelly here, who started a nonprofit for widowed parents who still have kids in the house. And today I'm going to be going over how she manages being a mom of 4 kids, running her business, and her best tips for creating a life worth living. So Kelly is a perfect example of knowing her purpose and creating an amazing life worth living. She's following her dreams, and she's creating massive impact for our local widows here in Knoxville, Tennessee. So how did you know starting this nonprofit was your calling?
So it took a long time to come to it. I suffered a massive stroke when I was 39. And at that time, I was working as a salesperson for my husband's company, actually, for a few years. And prior to that, I was a teacher. I've been a teacher most of my life. Stayed home for some time with my kids when they were younger, and then eventually went back to work. And when I suffered my stroke, something like that will leave you wondering, okay, what is my purpose, right? You hear this story all the time. There's life-altering events, and it makes you reevaluate life. And
Absolutely.
Eventually, about a year after my stroke, God brought us to Knoxville. And I kept feeling like there's a purpose here, there's something I'm supposed to be doing for God, but what is it? And CJ, my husband, kept saying, rest, recover, be a mom, help the kids adjust back to school. Like you don't have to be working right now. And I'm a doer. I've always just been a doer. And it was driving me crazy, and there was that like loss of self-identity. Like, well, if I'm not teaching or I'm not a sales girl, like what am I? And my kids at the time were entering high school. My youngest was entering high school, and my oldest was on his way out, really, of high school. He was a junior. It's a really terrible time to move your children. I don't ever recommend it. But that's what God called us to do. And so I knew that, time very soon I would become an empty nester, and I just was really feeling that pull. And so I was praying and praying for years, taking Bible studies on top of it. And the Bible studies kept telling me the same thing that CJ was telling me. The first one was, be still, wait on the Lord. The second one was, God is working, you just can't see it. The third one was obey and be obedient. And I mean, you should see my journal entries. It's like, Lord, if you just told me what I should do, I promise I'll obey it. And I'm like, but don't make it too hard, And just really begging him to tell me. And I knew that whatever it was would have to be something that aligned with my heart and with CJ's heart, because it would be a shift for our family of me going back to work. And I really wanted it something to be meaningful for me. And then I studied the book of James. And chapter 1, verse 22 says, be doers of the word, not hearers only, lest you deceive yourself. And I looked up at God. I started yelling at him. I'm like, I've been asking you for years what you want me to do, and you're not telling me. Don't tell me I'm deceiving myself, I'm sure he had a really good laugh at that because I ignored the rest of the text after that. And a few weeks later, sadly, my daughter's softball coach from Atlanta passed away from COVID. And at that time, we were helping a widowed mom in Chicago for some time, paying for cleaning services for her. And so there's CJ, his second night in a row, he's pacing the floor in our bedroom, and I'm like, babe, what's wrong? And he's like, I cannot stop thinking about the mom. So I can't stop thinking about the kid. Being a teacher, I'm just a giant kid lover. And I said, well, do you want to pay for cleaning services for Coach's wife too? And he said, I don't know, let me think on it. And the next day I'm driving and I'm listening to an Audible book. And in the Audible book, it quotes the book of James. And wouldn't you know, just 5 verses later, chapter 1, verse 27 says, the truest form of religion is to care for orphans and widows in their distress and remain unstained by the world. And I mean, just chills ran up and down my body. And I thought, holy cow, is this it? Like, widows, my husband's heart. Because when I had my stroke, the kids were, Frankie, my oldest, was going to be 14 the next day, actually. And my girls, twin girls, were 12, and my youngest was 10. And I mean, it was a series of miracles that allowed me to live. And we had wonderful support from our neighbors and friends.
CJ's probably wondering, like, oh my gosh, or he's thinking, like, I'm going to be a single parent.
Yes.
If you weren't to have made it.
Yes. He had really a glimpse of, whoa, what would life have been like had she passed away, had she died? And he would give me a look sometimes, and I told him, I go, I wish I could bottle that look, because it was appreciation for you. It was like, I can't believe you're alive, and you just treasure that moment, right? And so his heart is for widows, and that's why we were helping our friend in Chicago, and why he was pacing the floor. And so I started researching what was out there for widowed parents, and there was nothing out there. I mean, literally nothing out there that I could find. And I thought, wow, this is it. This is what God's calling me to do. So that's how I got started on
That's amazing.
On Widowed Parent Relief Project.
That's amazing. You were a teacher. You stayed at home for a little bit. You were in sales, and then the calling to do this. So what gave you the confidence to actually start a nonprofit with no experience doing it?
Oh yeah, I was scared to death. I'm being a teacher. There's a lot of everything you do is research based, right? So I'm like, okay, if the research is out there to support that there is a need for this, I will feel better. And I was doing that, and again, found really nothing out there. And I found this amazing paper written by a social worker who was a widowed parent herself, getting her master's, and she did research about the needs and what would help widowed parents. And it was like straight from the mouths of widowed moms and dads. And so that really helped us build our programs. So, you do a lot of praying and asking God to put people in your path of who would be able to help you with this, basically. Right. And the people that helped me were people that had insight to this. And when it was time to fill out the 501c3 form, we had really spent close to almost a year, probably 3/4 of a year, researching and coming up with the ideas of how we would implement Widowed Parent Relief Project. And it was time to do it. And I'm filling out the form, and it asks you for a code, a number for the IRS, like what category do you fall under? And I couldn't find or figure out what that code was, because what we do is so unique, and I couldn't find another one to be like, what did they do to know what code we were? Because we're not offering mental health services. We don't provide those things. We don't provide food. We don't provide clothing. Like, we help find the resources for all of the unique needs. And fear started to really set in, which these thoughts would creep in every once in a while, and I would just push them aside. And the best part about this story, so I told you how I wrote in my journal, like, I promise I'll obey, right? Yes. As my prayer to God. And just to kind of rewind a little bit, when I had my stroke, it was on May 2nd. And the next day was going to be May 3rd, and that would be 1 year to date of my mom passing away. So my mom died on May 3rd, which happened to be Frankie's birthday, and Frank's the oldest grandchild, and it was a very hard time for him, because he called my mom. He's like, Nana was my God person. She was the one who talked to me about God, and he felt like he lost that. So when I'm having my stroke and I'm getting in the ambulance, I look up at the sky as you're on the gurney, and I see Jesus's face and I see my mom's face, and I'm like, I started yelling at him. I'm like, you would not do this to Frankie 2 years in a row. Come on. Like there's just no way. Like tomorrow's Frank's birthday. Like you cannot have this happen.
Gosh.
Yeah. And the way that whole story rolls out is an amazing miracle story of how I even got to the point that I was even able to get into an ambulance. And the doctor told my husband, she's got 1 hour to live. Like you sign this paper, there's new technology. And they did a procedure. I had a massive blood clot that was lodged in the center of my brain. And they gave me all the medicine. Nothing was working. He's like, we got to go in and he's like, you can think of me as a plumber. The drainer didn't work. We got to go in and snake the drain. Oh, and CJ looks at it and he goes, are you the best plumber in this hospital? And the man, he kind of squares up. He's in a suit. And he says, so I wasn't supposed to be here today. I got called in for an emergency board meeting, which they interrupted to tell me about your wife. I'm the head of neurosurgery. I'm the best there is here. And so CJ signed it. And they then introduced me to the doctor. CJ introduced me to the doctor. And I got to tell you, I'm cracking jokes about Grey's Anatomy in my head. He's like, this is Dr. Caldy. And I couldn't see. I was totally blind on my left side. And the doctor's on my left side. So, of course, I can see CJ. So I kind of pushed myself over to see the doctor. And I pull back and is there a doctor? What is he? Oh, is there a Dr. Shepard in the hospital? And CJ's not. I'm cracking myself. CJ's not laughing at all. He's very serious. He didn't find that funny at all. He's like, Dr. Cawley's going to take good care of you. And he said to CJ, okay, say goodbye to your wife. And CJ goes like this, kisses my forehead. And CJ and I met when we were 14 years old. We were high school sweethearts. And they started to wheel away. And the doctor stops the gurney and says to CJ, no, you need to give your wife a kiss. Goodbye. And he looked at the doctor and said, I'm not kissing my wife goodbye. Now go hit a home run. And he turned around and he walked away. And then, of course, just started sobbing and lost it. And meanwhile, they're pulling me into the operating room. And I start to feel like I'm going to have a panic attack. And I can't breathe. And my mom was a nurse. I'm sorry, it's amazing. She's been gone for 8 years, and I still cry. But she was a nurse. I had never been in the hospital without her ever. And I just felt I was going to have a panic attack. And when my mom was sick, the one thing she kept saying was, don't worry, Kel. Jesus is holding my right hand. And she was reading the book, Jesus Calling. It's a daily devotional. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, Jesus calling, Jesus calling, Jesus calling, Jesus calling. This is what I'm saying in my brain. And all of a sudden, these Bible verses start flooding my brain. Be still, have no fear, I am with you. I mean, it was like they were not my thoughts. And this peace came over me. And I was like, okay, Jesus is holding my right hand. Jesus is holding my right hand. And all of a sudden, my right hand gets super warm. And there is no doubt in my brain, I'm going to look at my hand and I'm going to see Jesus holding it. There's not a doubt. And I looked down and I saw my mom's. And I gasped. I mean, I saw her ring, the knuckles, it was her hand.
Vivid. Wow.
Yes. Her nails, unbelievable. And I went, oh. And the nurse leans down in my face because, again, I couldn't see. And they're screaming because they think I can't hear, but I could hear. I just couldn't see much. And out of the left side, and she goes, are you allergic to anything? And 100 times that day, people asked me that question. They asked CJ that question. Both of us said no. Mm-hmm. And after my mom holds my hand, right at that moment, I go, oh, yes, I'm allergic to anesthesia. And those words never once came out of my mouth in my lifetime. I've had miscarriages and been in the hospital several times, and my mom was always the one to tell them she's allergic to anesthesia. And all of a sudden, it's like chaos. She's allergic to anesthesia, and there's people moving everywhere, and there's just mass chaos. And I'm pulling in, and I just smiled. I was like, okay, I'm good. God's gonna take care of me. And they kept me awake for the whole procedure, and it lasted 40 minutes or so, 45 minutes. And they sit me up, and they asked me to do all the things they asked me to do when I came in, which I couldn't do any of them. Raise both your hands, arms. How many fingers on this side? How many fingers are on that side? Let's you smile. And 100 times that day as well, people would say, smile. And then this response was always the same on their face. And I thought, ooh, that wasn't a good smile.
That wasn't a good smile.
I didn't do good on that one. And I was afraid to smile. And I let out a little smirk. And the doctor's like, let's see your teeth. And I just was like, all right, let it roll. And the whole OR erupted in claps and cheers and hoots and hollers. And that nurse leans down and she goes, honey, today was your day. She's like, someone was looking out for you. And I started sobbing. I'm like, it was my mom, blah, 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 And it was unbelievable. And there's just so many other little idiosyncrasies.
So when you go back to May 3rd.
Yeah.
So that happened. And then when you were about to start.
Yeah, so my stroke
WPRP.
was on May 2nd, and forever afterwards, I'm like, there are so many coincidences. I don't understand why my stroke wasn't on May 3rd. That's what I'm thinking in my brain. I'm like,
Right.
it should have been on May 3rd. But it wasn't. It was on May 2nd. And now fast forward all these years later, here I am, and I'm sitting at the kitchen table filling out this form, and fear starts setting in. And there's thoughts that are filling my brain, and I know now is the enemy. And it was, are you sure you're able to do this? You get tired all the time. You speak backwards. You probably already just did that earlier. Like I say things backwards all the time. You say wrong words. You fall asleep. You cry very easily. What makes you think you can do this? You're not even a widow. What gives you the right to do this? And people aren't going to appreciate you, or they're going to think that you don't have the right to do this. Like, where do you think you're coming from? These are the things filling my brain. And as I'm thinking those things, I see this little yellow GIF on my computer screen, and it says National Widows Day. And being in the fundraising world, I was like, oh, when's National Widows Day? We could have an event on that day. And I click on it, and it's May 3rd.
May 3rd. Wow.
I just lost my mind. I mean, literally lost my mind. I freak out. I'm like, oh my gosh. Oh my God. I call Frankie on his birthday, and I call my dad, and I'm like, you'll never guess. Because they obviously knew I was planning to
do this.
Yeah, to do this. I'm like, you'll never guess. And so my mom died on National Widows Day. I did not die on National Widows Day. And it was very clear. And I pushed back, and I literally raised my hand to the sky. I'm by myself in the kitchen, and I said, God, I will never let fear stop me again. I know that this is your mission, and I promised him that I would obey him. So I would not let fear stop me. And that was it. And I mean, there's been so many times that I still get afraid because you're spending people's money. You're working with people who are grieving and sad and hurt, and everyone's coming from different angles, and you don't want to say the wrong thing, and what's right for one is not right for another. And it's scary.
So juggling, so you started this, you found your people, you said you got, you prayed for God to put people in your path so that they could help you do this. And then how are you juggling family life? You're now back to work, creating a board, doing all the things, doing the events, and how are you balancing family and work life?
Yeah. I'm older now from the first time I've been at work, back in the days growing up as a young mom. And you learn a lot about yourself, right, when you go to do this. And one thing I learned and my family learned is, like, Kelly, you're kind of a workaholic. Like, it's just my personality. Just dive in. I'm definitely a perfectionist. I don't like to make mistakes. I like to make things as best as I can. And that affects your family life, and that affects your personal life, and that affects your work life. It affects everything. And so I had to really tune into that and understand that and make mistakes and give myself a lot of grace. Okay, today was not a great day of me balancing my family. I need to fix that fast. I do a lot of reflecting when I go to sleep at night. And then in the morning time.
Do you journal at night?
So no, the way I live my life really is like every morning I get up. So after my stroke, I suffered depression, and then of course that loss of self-identity and what am I supposed to do? And truly those Bible studies, they saved my life. God saved my life. He pulled me from that depression, and I can easily see when I'm not spending time with God in the morning, depression sets in, crabbiness, grouchiness, snapping at my kids, like patience, all the things, right? They just go out the window. And so every morning I get up and I spend at least 20 minutes with God, doing a Bible study, reading his word, praying.
Okay.
That helps me tremendously. And I started putting little things on my phone. So at 3:38 in the middle of the day, an alarm goes off on my phone, and it says gratitude time. And I just stop what I'm doing, and whoever's in front of me, I we talk about what we're grateful for right there in that moment. And that kind of brings you back a little bit like, hey, did you eat today, first of all? It's 3:30. Right. You should eat. And then appreciating, right? And like refocusing on the purpose and why we're here, And then at nighttime, so with like family dinners, like we try to do that, but there's been things that have gone out the wayside. So I don't cook anymore.
Kids are teenagers. Nobody's home to eat.
Yes.
CJ may work late. You may be home. You may be out with your friends.
Yes. That schedule, like, a teenage life for sure. And then they're always the monkey wrenches. Like, you think they're gone for the day, and then they're calling. Like, I've 2 at UT actually down the road, right? And my daughter is one. I love her so much, and she'll just call me and be like, "Hey, I'm coming home," and I'm like, "Oh, I had 100 things planned, but." Yes, sure. You come first, right? Like family is going to always come first. So you learn to adjust and put things aside. And it's like, I don't know, you almost die. And then you're surrounded by families who have experienced this. And wow, your life is put in perspective. Mm-hmm. Like so many things don't matter. I used to spend so much time cooking and making gourmet meals and like taking a lot of pride in that, and there's nothing wrong with that. I loved that. I enjoyed that, but now I don't have time for that. And it's like, but we still need to eat healthy.
Yes. So let me roll into this. One of the other questions, it's a little bit farther down, but we'll dive into it. So you used to enjoy cooking. You used to feel like doing, pride and all of that. And what we talk about is like creating this life worth living. So at some point in business, we have to leverage things out. Yes. And then at some point in our personal family life, what are you comfortable leveraging out? So are you able to just say, this isn't it, we're going to just go out to eat and actually spend time together? Or leveraging, are you paying someone to clean your house? What are the things that you are okay with pride-wise to leverage out in your personal family life?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me personally, and I'm sure it's different for everybody, right? But that dinner time and bonding time is really important to me and my husband. And so we eat out way more than we probably should financially and health-wise, right? But we try to make healthy choices. But there's someone coming and bringing you the food and cleaning up after you, and the food is made, and we can have that time together. So we eat out more than we should.
But it's worth it for me. Yeah, worth it.
Yeah, and especially where they're at now, too. The schedule is so off. We don't know. It changes all the time. So that we had to make that adjustment. The cleaning, we hired a cleaning lady. It used to be every other week, and that was really so helpful. Now that most of the kids are in college, I've got my youngest Dano, but he's so clean. And he's barely ever there anymore now, that we've gone down to once a month, and the laundry builds up, and I look at it, and where in the past I used to go, and you just feel all of this, like I have to do. Yes. And it's like, I'll get to that. Like, I'll just get to it. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, my laundry room looks really a mess right now. It's fine.
Right. So putting those things in perspective, and it shifts from being a pride thing just to, it's okay for my pride and my ego to have someone else clean my house or have someone else cook for me because I get to spend that time. Yeah. It's time you're not having to spend cleaning the house. It's time that you are sitting there with your family eating.
Yeah, because you want to think, and I think about this so much now from all of everything I've been through, is like, what do you want your kids to say about you when you're gone? Mm-hmm. Because I had to say something about my mom, right? And it's like, and then you have all these thoughts, and you're like, well, what's my legacy going to be? And do I want my legacy to be that I always had a clean house and I had great meals on the table? Now my kids will probably be like, she never cooked. but hopefully they'll say, I know my mom loved me. She dropped anything at the, she dropped anything. What was the phrase that I'm trying to say?
Oh, at the drop of a hat, she would, be right there.
Pick up for me. And if I called her, she would be there. And I know that she loved me. That's really all I want my kids to be able to say is I felt love. And I want my husband to be able to say that too.
Yeah. And then I think for, having this, knowing your purpose, that you helping widows. So I think there's another legacy on that. In addition to your family, husband and kids, it's like now hopefully every widow in Knoxville that's been referred to this program can say, oh my gosh, Kelly and her company, loves us and came in and talk a little bit about, what that process looks like. I mean, somebody gets referred to WPRP and then what happens? Yeah. What do you guys do for them?
Yeah, good question. So, Our goal really is to love on all of our families. But the mission is to alleviate everyday stressors and help build an enduring support system so that they can spend more time with their children and focus on their family's mental health and healing. So the enduring support is one element, and then the alleviating the stress so they can be with family. Because like you think about, like, hey, if we can take something off your plate, if we can take cleaning off your plate, that's going to allow you a little extra time to be with your kids. It'll take some stress off your kids too. I don't know if this is how I grew up, and how I do with my own kids. It's like, this house isn't clean, and it filters down to the kids. And so it's like, we know that by helping the parent, you're helping the child. And so it looks different for everybody, though. Like, those stressors are truly just different for everyone that comes in. So someone gets referred to us, we learn about their unique needs and their situation, and then we do have some paid services that we will pay for if it's a need for them. The cleaning services, we have a self-care fund. So what we often find is, what we're talking about right now, right? Like, the first thing to often go out the window when you lose your spouse is taking care of yourself. You have your own life that was on the rails and all of your responsibilities that you were doing to start with, and then, which is caring for the kids and doing all these things, right? And or working. And then your partner dies. And now all of those responsibilities are also on you. And sometimes your partner had a business, and now that business is landed. Like, what are you going to do with that? And like, there's just so much that has to be sorted through while you are grieving, while your children are grieving. And so we want to just learn what those are and say, how can we help in that unique need? And that self-care.
Huge.
Oh my gosh. Like, our parent in Chicago, when we started this, I called her, because again, we were paying for her naturally these cleaning services, and I just started drilling her. I'm like, can I ask you a million questions? And we're telling about the WPRP and what I wanted to do. And I'm like, can I get some insight from you? And what have been your challenges? That's kind of what I just asked her. And she's like, oh, well, this week, my parents were supposed to watch the kids. I was going to go get my hair done. And they couldn't. They couldn't do it. She goes, I have 3 friends that typically rely on, and I called them and none of them could do it. So I'm just not getting my hair done. And I said, is that a common challenge? She's like, yeah, I don't like to rely on my parents because they do so much in the bulk of the day. She's like, so doctor's appointments and things like that are challenging to get to, and you'll just forego them. And I'm like, oh, no. We need to make sure that you can take care of yourself, because it's like the airplane, the oxygen mask falls, and what do they say? Take care of you first so that you can take care of your child, right?
Yeah,
so it's like, okay. So we do have a self-care stipend. Not everybody needs that. We'll forego it, pay it forward to the next family. But that's really important to us. And then what we do is we partner each parent with a volunteer that we call a family friend.
Okay.
And that person, we call them a family friend because it's like, hey, you need to jump in the trenches with them and get to know them as fast as possible and be that family member, but also that friend. Sometimes you don't want your family seeing certain things.
Right.
And sometimes you don't want your friends seeing certain things. But this person, we wanted that combination of like, hey, you're safe.
They're an
with
outside
me.
source. They don't know anyone, most likely.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, you can just unload, tell me everything. And then what they do is they really are a liaison between the community and the parent. And sometimes the parent and even their group of friends, because what we find and what research shows is that many widowed parents lose their friend group. They lose their social support. Maybe they were all married and now going out as a group, and then your spouse dies, and now the friends are going, oh, should we invite? I don't want to hurt their feelings. People don't know what to do, and they don't know what to say. And as a community member, that was me, right? Forming WPRP with my friend in Chicago. I'm like, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. When we were doing the cleaning services, CJ is the one that talked with her and called her and worked it all out. He's like, why are you not talking to her? I'm like, I don't know what I would say. I think I would just cry, and that wouldn't be fair to her. It just wouldn't be fair. Our stories, I knew a lot of her stories, a lot aligned with my life. And I didn't say anything.
Nothing.
That's terrible.
So if we relate, so providing that support, and then I'm going to go back to you. So pausing on the WPRP story a little bit. So for you, who has been support? You know, you've gone from working, not working, having the stroke, and then you dive into creating this nonprofit. And then who is your support? Who helps you?
Who helps me?
Supports you with this
With
venture?
WPRP?
Just in life. Yes, and in life.
Yeah. It's very much become blended to the point where some of my daughter's like, Mom, you gotta stop talking about WPRP all the time. I'm like, I know, my poor friends are probably so sick of hearing about it, but I'm so excited about it. And when you're starting a nonprofit, who are you gonna go to besides your friends, know?
Right.
And I wasn't working here. I didn't have a network of people from work or anything. And so really it was all of my friends and family. We have a really big support group in Chicago because that's where I'm from.
Yeah.
They really helped fund a lot of this in the beginning.
Great.
And helping it go. Yeah, I absolutely could not have done any of this without them. This doesn't work without volunteers, and it doesn't work without funding. And so, and then some of his friends have volunteered and done things, and others, are just donating, and that's huge. So honestly, yeah, friends, and then you look at all your friends and you go, so who do you know? Who do you think would be interested in? And then they're tapping into their extended circles.
Their networks, yeah.
And it is amazing when you start talking to people, right? Because death does not discriminate. It affects all of us. And that is one thing that gives me confidence in WPRP of going out and talking to people about it, because there's no political lines.
Right.
There's no, really death affects everybody. And so, but it's amazing how when you start talking about it with people, they'll identify right away with you. Like, yeah, I lost my parent when I was younger. One of our board members, she had no idea. And I'm talking to her about this. She was like, is this a real organization you're talking about, or is this? And I said, no, yeah, I'm starting this. And she said, wow, my mom would have been one of those people that you served. I lost my dad when I was young. And wow. And so right away, I'm like, would you want to get involved? Yes. Hands down, yes.
Yes.
And now she's, one of our biggest advocates.
Yeah.
The churches have been tremendous. Two Rivers Church here,
Yeah.
Fellowship Church. Really, both of them have really helped us launch.
That's amazing.
Bringing in the volunteers.
So I'm going to share a little personal plug into this. I lost my husband in January of 2022, and little did I know, I thought these people calling from WPRP were a scam. You get all these calls, and so when that happened, I was getting tons of calls, and then Kelly reached out. So I met Kelly when our kids were golfing together freshman year, and so knew her for several years prior to WPRP. And then she calls me on her cell and says, hey, I think my people are trying to reach out to you. You've been referred to the program. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought it was a scam, So I went through the program personally, had the family friend and took advantage of some services and them, walking alongside of us. And so I think it's amazing if you are a widow, you're single, you're any mama with a heart, and want to get involved in this organization. I think it's amazing. So definitely check them out. We'll plug that down below. Is there anything you want to talk? Okay, so let's talk about boundaries. So we were talking about balancing family and work life. We often have to set boundaries, and this is in our business, with our people, with our kids. How and what boundaries do you set in your life to make sure that you can do what you need to do and move forward?
That's such a great question. And we all, you form them. And some people are amazing at how diligent they are and can keep them. And I'm one of those people that I'm like, the more the merrier, and come on over, and always, since I was little, my dad's like, Kelly, you're burning the candle at both ends, I'm fine. And I see it now in my children, and I'm like, you guys, you need to calm down. So boundaries are important. So my first boundary that I set, for sure, knowing how not having God as a focus every day affected my mental health, number one. And I made it very clear to my family, my husband, I'm like, I need to wake up in the morning and do this, and I need to go to church every Sunday. Yeah. And that's it. And so you can come or not, but this is what I have to do. Yeah. And
so you set that boundary just with your family. I mean, period.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there is the boundary of shutting it off. And I really, oh gosh, I mean, I just said to CJ the other night, I'm like, I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm dreaming about this at all times. I'm like, he's like, it's really sad that you can't shut it off. And he goes, but you've been like that your whole life. I would do lesson plans in my sleep. When I was a teacher, I would wake up in the middle of the night. I'm doing a sale for Give Smart where I worked before. He's like, this is just how you are as a human. And I don't know how to shut that off when I go to sleep, but I do I turn on my Bible app and they have a, where it'll read to you, you know, the psalm. I pick a psalm. That'll put you to sleep real quick. And that does help me like refocus on God and like reflect on my day. And then when I shut my computer for the day, I try really hard not to talk about it for the rest of the night. Unless, of course, there's like this like amazing, great story of like, because God has done just tremendous things. And I always want to give him glory for all of the things that he does. So sometimes I can't shut up about it. I'm like, listen to what God did today, you know?
Well, and I think that's more of like a gratitude sharing versus like unloading your problems from work onto your family. And I think that's different.
Yeah.
I think that's different.
Yeah.
So in the morning, you set that boundary, and then in the evening, trying to shut it off. I mean, I think all working moms have this struggle, this internal battle with themselves on being able to shut it off. Especially, you know, it's like in my instance, I am providing for the family. So how do I shut that off when, you know, the financial burden of, oh my gosh, I have to do this. Yet it's like I need to be present. I need to be present for the kids. So yes, it's the switch of, and same with you. It's like shutting off the work mode to just be with your husband at dinner.
Yeah. And you know, we as moms, right? I mean, the mom guilt of life, like from day one, it's amazing how that exists. And so I have found that I just need to oftentimes cut myself some graces where it's like, okay, yeah, I wasn't great today. You know, I wasn't a great mom today, or I wasn't a great worker today, or I wasn't a fill in the blank. We say it all the time.
Yes.
And you acknowledge it, and then you try to get better the next day, right? Or you try to turn it around. And the one thing that I just would, again, I'm not perfect at it at all, but what I see every day, day in and day out, is money problems will come all the time. There's always, you never have enough. You know, more money you come across, the more problems you see, right? Like, and money can always be a struggle, but your time with your kids is not always going to be there. Your time with your husband is not always going to be there, and that is like, if you can, when you go outside of your boundaries, refocus back to that, and everything else, if you have the love with your family, if you have God first, that's my faith, but not everybody. So it's like, but the things that matter, the only thing that lasts in this world is love. Love actually remains and passes on and through to people. I see it with my mom. My kids will do something, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so straight, my mom, you know, and I'm sure you see it with Joe, you know, it's like, that's his love passing through. That's my mom's love passing through. When we die, our love, that's what I want. I want my love to pass through, so that's the only thing that lasts forever.
Yeah,
Nothing else lasts forever.
So if you could give, if you could give these viewers one tip for creating a life worth living, what would you say to them?
Well, I mean, it's so cliche, follow your heart, right? It's like, but you got to really reflect on that. Like, what is important to you? What I would love to say is, don't make it be where you have to have your mom die and then you have a massive stroke in order to like have meaning in your life, right? And look at your life and say, what do I want? What do I want my legacy to be? What do I want people to say about me when I'm gone? And it's different for everybody, but and pray on it. For me, again, being faithful, that's my mode.
Right.
Everybody's got different modes, so it's like, think on it, whatever that works for you. Journal on it, focus on it, and really, really follow that. Then don't be afraid to follow it. Trust that you're being guided to do what you're meant to do. If your purpose is clear to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Thank you, Kelly, so much. This has been amazing. I'm gonna let Kelly plug WPRP one last time. So if it's the website, if it's how do we get in touch with you guys if we want to donate, help, volunteer? Tell us.
That would be amazing. We cannot exist without volunteers and donations. So WPRP, we sound like a radio station, but we're not. We help widowed parents. It's Widowed Parent Relief Project. If you check us out online, WPRP.org, you'd be able to really see and dive in. There's a whole get involved form there, and you can help wherever you're at in all different ways. So
awesome. Thank you so much, Kelly. If you guys like this episode, check me out at Brandy Lydon on YouTube. Click and subscribe today. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Brandy.